Blue Quest.
Welcome to another episode of the Blue Quest Human Potentials podcast. I'm Johannes, and I'm very happy to have Paul Taaffe here today with me. Paul is an investor of Blue Quest and a friend of mine, and I've asked Paul if he would be willing to be on this podcast to tell a little bit about his experience, which is quite big and quite long over the last decades, and give us insights into his career and his learnings. Paul is working in the finance domain close to Frankfurt, but I would like you, Paul, to introduce yourself and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and how you think.
Well, thank you, Johannes, for making me feel very old right at the
Oh my
beginning.
God.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks for having me. Yeah, born and raised in the west of Ireland. Left Ireland after my A levels or leaving certificate, as we call it in Ireland. My dad died early of cancer, and I got a little bit disillusioned with Ireland and decided to travel the world and get out of the away from the small claustrophobic island of Ireland, and ended up in Frankfurt, which is probably the city in Germany where most people spoke English back then. I didn't speak German back then, and because of the American influence, a lot of troops, or American GIs based here, etc. So it was quite international, the most international city in Germany, and that is still the case. I would say. So I fell in love with Frankfurt actually, and I met my first wife here, and decided to focus on a career here. Started studying accountancy. I have an accounting qualification from Scotland, chartered accountant, certified chartered accountant, and parallel to that, I worked my way up the ladder, so to speak, for American multinational companies. And my plan was, after I discovered that I really wanted to be successful for the traveling around the world, I wasn't too bothered about that. I had other priorities. I decided that I want to become a global CFO. And that was the plan. And I started off, and I went at it in a quite a structured way. I started off with Memorex Telecom, which is an American company, American multinational company in the computer industry. I became treasurer rather quickly, and then I became assistant vice president treasury EMEA rather quickly. And then I decided, okay, treasury is one aspect of finance; it's an important one, but I need controlling. So I moved to Pepsi Cola back here in Frankfurt. We were down in Italy for Memorex in the headquarters. So I became head of controlling Central Europe for Pepsi Cola, which was a big mess and a huge challenge, but we managed to sort things out in a short period of time, a couple of years. And then my boss from Pepsi went to Nike, and as things happen, Jurgen wanted to bring me to Nike, and I went to Nike. I had 14 interviews with different Nike people, and they all had a thumbs up, and I had a big thumbs up because it was a great company. Yeah. So I became finance director of Nike, and later general manager of the Nike footwear business in Central Europe. And then that job was moved to the States, and we didn't want to move to the States because of the family situation. The kids were young. So I then moved into another industry, the automotive industry, which is completely different to sporting goods, not as emotional by any means. And I became the vice president of finance EMEA of Lear Corporation, which is, Detroit mentality versus Oregon. They're just worlds apart. But Lear was also a great company. I did that for 4 years. And then I got fed up of that world. As you mentioned, I got bored, and I got into contact with private equity. A few of my friends were in private equity, and the whole concept of buying a company, coming in, changing the company strategically, operationally, a team, etc., and creating value and selling that company later, period of time, 3, 5, 7 years, average is about 5 or 4, and make a pile of money while doing that. It sounded like a very attractive proposition to me. Now, the theory with making the huge amount of money and the practice can be different. Depends on the business model and the different economic situations, etc. But I did that. I did 3 private equity CFO jobs for big private equity houses. Texas Pacific Group, Advent, and for CVC Capital. And then I decided to go into consulting because I was already thinking about setting up my own company. And I became partner of Alvarez and Marzal
Yeah.
in Munich, private equity partner. Yeah, and that was then the last station. That was a couple of years I did there. One of the big restructurings in Germany with Tele Columbus, which was quite a lot of publicity back then. Yeah, and then I decided to set up my own company in the recruitment business. Why did I do that? Uh, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. My brothers are entrepreneurs. My sister's an entrepreneur. And I felt it was a good time for me to become an entrepreneur. And I also felt, and this is the last point on that one, Johannes, that I could do it a lot better than the other headhunters that I used to work with myself. So
Oh,
that's kind of me in a nutshell.
that's quite a big nutshell. Thank you so much for. I mean, that's really astonishing, and it fades into my next question a bit, or like it naturally triggers this one. I mean, you said in the beginning that you set the goal to become a CFO, right? And then it took quite a few years to become it. How important was that kind of upfront decision to become something that you really were able to strive towards? Would you have, what do you think? Would you have been ended up there and the same? And this in turn goes into the next question after this one, where we
Yeah.
focus on human potential. How important was this upfront decision to I will be CFO one day?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it didn't take me long to become CFO, Johannes. It happened very quickly. But yeah, no, it was my plan. I just got married and I was ready to set up a family, so I wanted to make sure I could look after my family. So that made me ambitious. One of my
Mhm.
brothers in South Africa was extremely successful, and every time we met at Christmas, I felt, oh boy, I need to catch up with this guy. So that gave me more ambition, and because I'd been traveling around the world and kind of doing bits and pieces, I was ready to get serious about career. And then I met my first wife, and she was a very positive influence on me, and got some structure into our lives, and started studying, and yeah, and then it was not looking back from there. It just went very well. There's always a bit of luck involved,
Yeah,
but I mean, I was highly motivated and wanted to change the world in every company I went to, and I'm not quite sure I changed the world, but I certainly became a junkie change manager.
I can
And,
see. And
and
yeah.
they're the kind of assignments that I was on all the time, and that's why private equity was the perfect place for me to end up.
So I just reckon from this, prime motivations were the innovation part, changing something that's for the better and your family, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, maybe another aspect of it, I get bored quickly. So my great passion is in doing new things and doing them well. And even now, as an entrepreneur and CEO of my own company, I love reinventing things. My industry is very rusty,
hmm.
and there's so many opportunities to be more innovative, to be faster, to deliver better value for money for customers. I think our industry is seriously in need of overhauling.
Well, I think the same. And that's, I mean, that there's a lot of aspects we could talk about now, but you said a cool thing here, and this is like you get bored very fast, right? So this is a trait of yours, not, I mean, that's quite individual. Not every person gets bored very fast. It means you have a high curiosity and you need new stimuli quite often. And that's also something that fits better into some jobs than into other jobs, right? For some jobs, you need acribic, detailed orientation, and for some, you need constant, renewed energy and renewed innovational stuff. So, how, and now going to human potential. What is your different, as you know, we as a company, we make human potential tangible for companies, and we work together also on some things, you and I, and you and we, Paul. What is the definition for you of human potential, right? You've had quite a lot of experience in being in jobs, in working together with people, in making people successful in your teams. What's your take on that?
Yeah. Let me just add one thing though beforehand. I mean,
Sure.
getting bored quickly does not mean I'm not interested in detail.
Mhm.
As a CFO, you have to be interested in detail to know where the problems are, and
Mhm.
you cannot get away from that detail until you know you have a solution. So as a CFO, you've got to be able to move down to the trenches with your helicopter for the operational stuff, for things that are broken, and move your helicopter back up for the strategic aspect of things. So that's an important point. Human potential. Well, I'll tell you, my favorite slogan, and that's all over my LinkedIn profile, is if you have the right people, you can't prevent success. And I have proven that over and over and over again in the situations that I've been in. Pepsi Cola is a good example. Pepsi hired people much below the bench that the people in the States in headquarters of Pepsi had. So they were absolutely hiring the wrong type of people for that company, and they were kind of shocked and asking me, Paul, is this typical for Germany, or are they always like this? And they just didn't hire very, very well. Yeah, they had a reputation for hire and fire and all that good stuff, and there was a bit of that as well. So for my natural tendency is, okay, how do I change things? The people and the process and the execution, the combined execution. That's what it's all about. And I've seen it happen so many times. You have a guy in there who just doesn't fit. I mean, he's doing his best, but he doesn't fit. And you bring in somebody new that does fit, completely different profile and DNA, etc. And the world changes. And these people don't need day-to-day maintenance. They just take the initiative and roll. And I've always done that. I mean, you can always make a mistake hiring, because I've done a lot of hiring, but the majority of my hires were very, very good, and that's what made me successful and allowed me to move up and spend more time with senior management on strategy and the important things on business planning, communicating with the private equity stakeholders, which I loved, the boardroom meetings with private equity, with some of the connoisseurs of private equity, Ralph Hook from Advent, Steve Colt of CVC Capital, David Bonderman, one of the inventors of private equity, Texas Pacific Group. So that was all fascinating. So human potential is quite often not recognized, underutilized, and that's why I love your business model. And we'll get to that later, because I think the tools that you have need to be used more and more and more, because managing human capital is not as high on the agenda in a lot of companies as it needs to be, as it must be. There's a lot of companies that don't have a human resources strategy.
I
In fact,
can.
most of the companies don't have a human resources strategy. And we have a session on that with private equity coming up in the middle of September. I'm really
Okay.
looking forward to it. We've got some very creative private equity people, and we're talking about how to tackle that. I mean, you have to have, for me, private equity, not just private equity, but human resource strategy is the umbrella over everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll come to that as well. But I'll tell you, Johannes, we executives, we need more scientific help in making the right decisions. And that's why I'm a huge believer in the psychometric testing and all of that area. And that is becoming more and more and more common, especially with our private equity customers. We had a new private equity customer, and we won like 3 months ago now. And all the candidates had to do 3 psychometric tests before a decision was made as to whether they'd be interviewed or not.
Yeah.
And the final decision on who they took, I was surprised, because he didn't have any experience in the industry, but he's highly intelligent.
Yeah.
And highly intelligent. It was clear to me that he was far from being dumb. Yeah, but I mean, his results were just so good. So he was intellectually so sharp. The founder of this private equity company, who's a very, very well-known person, I won't mention names here.
No.
He is huge a fan and insists upon the psychometric testing. And to me, that is an intrinsic part of a recruitment process that you cannot do without. I'll give you one anecdote, Johannes. It's back a few years ago, I was in a process for a CFO of a private equity portfolio company here in Germany with a well-known private equity house. And the final part of the whole thing, I'd been through the interviews, met the board, all that good stuff. It was all thumbs up. Okay, Paul, meet two psychologists at Frankfurt Airport for a couple of hours. I did. They were really, really good. Really, really good. We had a great conversation. And at the end of 2 hours, we all agreed Paul's not the right guy. This is not the right job. So if we hadn't done that, I probably would have signed a contract and made a mistake, and the company would have made a mistake. It just didn't fit. And I tried to convince myself it was a great fit. So I was telling myself lies. I was kidding myself. And the psychologists and the testing helped me because I said, you're absolutely right at the end. What's the point in doing this and setting yourself up for failure? It just didn't fit culturally. It was far too small. The geographic location was far too far away for my family. And lots and lots of other things. I came from a big American kind of mentality type international company where, you have in America, you have the people from Harvard and MIT and Stanton and brilliant people, very inspiring people. So my shall we say, my upbringing in the American multinational world was hugely and is hugely beneficial to me even to this day because the Americans are so strategic in what they do and zero emotional versus the Europeans. Not a lot of people know this, but Germans are a lot more emotional people than Americans are. A lot
Absolutely.
more.
Absolutely.
Americans are much more controlled. And I remember sitting in the boardroom, American management, top management from Nike, the president, Tom Clark, all there. And then we had the German management team. And the German management team was emotional. They were saying, no, this can't be done. We can't beat Adidas. And the US guys were kind of, whoa, what do you mean you can't beat Adidas? We've beaten Adidas worldwide. Yeah, it's their home market, etc. And the US guy said, look, guys, it's not a matter of if we beat Adidas, it's a matter of how we beat Adidas.
How and when, yeah.
How and when. I mean, it took a bit of time and we made some mistakes on the way, but that was for me a great benefit of the upbringing with American companies. And private equity is also, it's full of extremely bright, very well educated, quick thinkers who are strong, very strong on strategy. Yeah.
I think that's also different. I mean that shows also in the acceptance of tools like psychometrical evaluations, also overarching digital strategies to support business strategy, also in the domain of human potential, right? It is much more appreciated and accepted on the American domain than in Germany. And that's
absolutely. Now it's changing. But I mean, the ideal recruitment process, and we've just started doing this and using your tools as well, as you know, is a company has a vacancy.
Yes.
So what do? You agree on a profile. It's probably the most important part of the recruitment process.
It's the requirement. The requirements.
Getting the right profile. I bring in the market input, I bring in the CFO input, and the company brings their input. We have a meeting of the minds and we get a very, very good profile together. Now we'll do the profile and we do the job fit scorecard and all that good stuff, which Finance People Solutions does. But the element that is becoming more and more common is that we translate this profile into personality traits.
Yeah.
What does this candidate need to be from a personality perspective? What do they need to be good at? Detail-oriented, strategic, operation, communication, leadership skills. And then we do the matching, using your tools. And that's where you really can identify really good fit, maybe not sure. And there's another element of it which I'm a big believer in is the profile of the job that the company is looking for, the profile of the current job that the candidate is in, because quite often he's stretched within the current job and he's not a good fit for that job. So you need to be very careful on that one. Yeah. That's an aspect that needs to be tested as well. And then you go out there and, my God, you make some of the most important decisions we make. Who leads the company? Who's head of finance? Who's head of marketing? Who's head of sales? Geez, if you don't get that right, then you're not going to be successful.
It can destroy companies. I've seen it multiple times.
Yeah, and quite often in private equity, and I love working in the private equity space, they buy a company and they have 3 CFOs within the first 3 years. That investment is basically screwed because you've lost so much time. You've lost the credibility of the workforce, or so a little bit skeptical when it comes to private equity and the the Montefiore expression back then. The what did he call them? The Franz Montefiore. I can't think of it right now, but it
Don't
put
worry.
it put a very negative light on private equity, and so when private equity investors come in, the employees were very unsure. And I mean, the good private equity companies, they invest in building the business, building the team, of course, making it more efficient, and of course, low performers have less chance in companies like that. It's a
Yeah,
performance-driven environment. That's the way it is.
yeah.
Heuschrecken was what Montefiore said. Private
Heuschrecken, yes, Heuschrecken, yes. It's like, well, you mentioned now that that it's one of the most strategical topics to have a human resource strategy, right? I mean, what we see a lot in companies is human resource administration, because administration is what you have to do if you want to follow the law. So you have to do it. But when it comes to that, what comes on top of this administration, you see many companies struggling. And I think this kind of what we do as Bluequist, it isn't just utilization beneficial within recruiting, but it can be used across the whole lifespan of an employee journey if you put it into the right way. So when you, Paul, talk about human resource strategy, what's that for you? I mean, which areas does it touch?
it means for me, first of all, you hire the right people,
Yeah,
yeah, and then you make sure the people are in an environment where they can play to their strengths and add more and more value because they're having more and more fun. The correlation between fun and performance at work is high. It's extremely high, and I know a lot of people who are in jobs who are not happy. A lot of people complaining about this not being good and that not being good. I know it myself. I was glad to get away from Pepsi at the end because I just didn't feel comfortable with the style that was coming from the states on that one. And Nike was a much different type environment and culture. So you hire human resources that match the needs of the company, not just the strategic needs, the cultural needs.
yeah,
Yeah. Although culture at private equity is not such a big deal because driving it through the company is difficult if you're only going to be around for 4 or 5 years.
yeah.
Usually it goes down to the second level management and not below. Yeah, so it's hiring the right people and then helping those people grow and grow and grow. And if they grow and grow and grow, they'll make your business more and more successful.
Yeah.
Correlation is one.
Which, yeah, which is across the whole business, right? Across all the functions, across all
I
departments.
agree. I agree. I mean, what I love about the tool, I'm not want to do marketing now for yourselves, but I really like it. Is you look at your population of employees, and you look at are people on the right jobs, and it's so often the case they're not.
Yeah.
What jobs should they be on, etc. How should we train them to do that job, etc., etc. It's a really really broad field that is still not done very smartly by most companies.
Because why? What do you think? Is it fear? Is it like fear of being wrong, of touching this
I,
data
I,
of
I think I think a lot of companies don't recognize the importance of it.
okay, just
They don't recognize how important it is to do it conceptually and strategically. Um, knowing each human resource that I have in my company, what are they good at, what are they not so good at, whether they need training. I mean, we had it at Dell that was quite good. We had a thing every 6 months called Tell Dell, and have to be a bit careful with the surveys because you have to stay objective with something like that. And some of the scores were for bad managers that were high.
okay.
So that's a little bit tricky. But the
Yeah, it
theory
is.
was you have this bottoms up 360-degree feedback, and that enables you to go after the strengths and weaknesses of management and make the necessary changes to have the workforce more motivated. So I mean, it was the idea is good. It was very cumbersome. It was all manual, but we had for every for myself, I had a the grading every year. Is he exceptional? Is he excellent? Is he okay? Is he so excellent? That means potential for going further.
Yeah,
Is he solid? That means good in his current job. Not sure if he can do the next one.
yeah,
And is he below expectations? And do we need to manage him out or manage him to improve? Yeah.
yeah.
and you have that analysis. But it was all very manual. I mean, with today's tools, you can put up pictures of the results of the talent analysis done from this is red, this is yellow, this is green, and you see immediately, oh, I've got a problem, or no, I'm strong here, I'm good on benchmark, I have a good benchmark here, and nobody does it.
Nobody does it. Even though, I mean, you can model your whole organization digitally today if you want to. You can put it
Yes,
all into an overview. You can do it with
I know.
Bluequist. You can do it with some other tools. And I know even in your industry, right, in financials, there's even a legally binding restriction that you have to do risk management, as far as I know. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And then if you look at today's world, I mean, we do benchmarking of finance organizations, and my partner does that. We've been doing that for years and years. And I mean, a big area of risk these days is cybersecurity. Yeah, huge area of risk. I mean, it's out of control. So the whole world has changed, in particular for CFOs, because the buck always stops at the CFO when something goes wrong. So risk management, building a risk management system in a company, I find very difficult. I mean, I've done it in a few companies, but not on my own. I had the expertise, brought in people who knew how to do it. It's a different kettle of fish to financial risk. There's all kinds of risks involved in there: hard risk, software risk, patent risks, all in the pharmaceuticals industry, for example, big one. Yeah, so today's business world with Corona, with VUCA, things change so fast, and a lot of human beings struggle with this pace, and we end up having an awful lot of improvisation in companies, which is unprofessional. And to your point on human resources, I have the pleasure of working with some great human resources people. Their first question is, what can I do to help the business?
sure.
There are other human resources functions that they are there to tell you what you can't do.
Both
They're not
sides.
they're
Both
not my
sides.
friends. They're not
I,
my friends. But luckily enough, there are some HR. Although I do think HR, there are some refreshing examples out there, people that I really love working with. But when it comes to innovation and the speed of change, I think CEO is come along a long way. I think CFO has come along a tremendous amount. Marketing, sales also. I mean, sales is. I'm just reading a book now about how important is relationship management, or should it
yeah.
move to challenging? And I'm a big believer in the challenging thing and not just the relationship. So things are moving on, but I think HR is not moving on as fast as it should be.
Well, then let's talk about. I mean, my next question goes into the future, right? So maybe not just talking about your role now, but like in 10 years, your job, but also the jobs you talked about. You could pick one or two. What will they look like in 10 years? Is your job still there in 10 years? Is it done by robots? Is it like hybrid? Where are you seeing yourself and people that are in your industry in 10 years? What will change, or what has to change?
Um, well, luckily enough, I'm in the recruitment business, and that's a people business. So I think we will have lots of assistance in becoming more and more efficient through artificial intelligence and matching and all that kind of stuff. But I do not think you'll be able to replace the human element of it. Just everything underneath will become more and more efficient, and I think it is the onus is on us to deliver a much better service, much more quickly, at less cost to our customers.
Mhm.
And I think the industry is resisting that because people are sitting in a comfortable place. The big headhunting companies, they have huge overheads and they charge a fortune to customers. And, some of them do quite a good job, but I hear a lot of complaints about the quality of the service and the lack of speed or recycling candidates, etc. I mean, in today's world with LinkedIn and Sing, I mean, we have every CFO in DACH in our LinkedIn network, more or
Yeah.
less. Yeah, and so you're within two fingertips of writing them a note. If there's a particular topic, or you give them information via LinkedIn. We're very active on LinkedIn. We do a lot of branding on LinkedIn. It's much easier than in the old days when you you had your yellow book, your yellow pages, and you had a telephone number. And first of all, you had to phone the guy. I mean, I'll tell you an example of
True.
something for me, which I think is ridiculous. People calling spontaneously in today's age, unless it's something important. Like I have a couple of customers where I always take the call, even if I'm on another one.
Yeah.
But the chances of getting me on a spontaneous call during the day are zero. And I would never call a customer spontaneously. I'll drop them a note and say, "When do you have 5 minutes?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and this whole thing of spontaneous calling, it's inefficient. It's old fashioned. It's rude, in
It's
my
rude.
opinion.
It's rude. Yeah. It's
You know,
considered rude today. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you make an appointment in the calendar. You can do it very easily. I don't have a secretary. I don't need a secretary. 10 years ago, I couldn't do anything without a secretary.
Yeah. Technology. You said so it's not replaced, but it's assisted. What's your relationship with technology? How do you how
Technology is an enabler. Technology is an enabler, and technology enables us recruiters to do a much better service more quickly.
and you see it increasing, and and as a like question is, you see it as core critical business concept for recruiting over the next years, I assume.
Undoubtedly, undoubtedly. I mean, we have become in Corona more productive than we were beforehand. We've been forced to become more productive, and I believe that the virtual world of recruitment, that you can have virtual recruitment just as good as face-to-face recruitment.
Well, I believe that too. That's why we're building also Blue Quest. So we believe in that future, that you can enhance this, and you can enhance human interaction by assisting with truly helpful information. So glad to hear that as well. Paul, we are now like 32 minutes into this talk. Don't want to stress your time too much, but do you have let's maybe two or three more questions?
Sure.
This question I ask all my guests, and it goes a bit into the personal sphere. So you can decide how you answer it. It's about once I heard in a podcast of Seth Godin, I heard the term defining moments. So it's about things that change your perception of life, right? That change your course in life significantly. And if I follow the theory I heard about it, it doesn't happen too often. It maybe happens once, twice, or three times a life, but then it has a profound impact if you choose to take the chance there. So my question to you is, on this note, did you have any? If you think back on the last years, what was one of those defining moments for you, and what did it change for you?
Yeah, well, personally, of course, having my children, that was a defining moment. The first one took a day, and my youngest son came very quickly. He was on his way before I got to the hospital. Yeah, so they were defining moments. Um, for me, career-wise, a defining moment was discovering my passion for changing things.
Hmm.
That was for me the game changer that I knew. And I always said this. I said my family is always more important than the company, and my key skill set is changing things, and that's why I had to move jobs. I moved every 3 to 4 years, but I always moved upwards at the beginning, and then with private equity to different private equity projects. So
Hmm.
my passion for change, once I discovered that, became very clear to me that that's my USP.
And how did you discover this? Was it gradually, or was it like, bam?
Yeah, yeah, it was. It was. I had great satisfaction in improving things.
Hmm.
I mean, I remember when I joined Memorex as assistant treasurer. Within 3 months, my boss was fired, and I was given the treasury job because the CFO trusted me and gave me an awful lot of trust. And I just loved fixing things and changing things. And even today, I mean, when we're talking about new ideas, we're just reinventing our search process a bit. Spent the whole day on that, and one of my team ladies, Susanna, got very tired in the process because I was still challenging. We need to do it better, 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 and I mean, she worked hard. He does a great job, but I wasn't. It wasn't perfect for me, so we've changed it again, and we'll be sending out something to a customer tomorrow that hopefully will blow them away.
Okay, good to know. Maybe one. I mean, let's give some advice also now. If you would say your 20-year-old me, right back then, and with all your experience, but also looking at young professionals, young people today from different age groups, different backgrounds, is there something you would say what really counts today to become a better version of yourself, right? To improve, to reach your goals. What would you in your shoes tell someone of age of 20 what really matters, what counts in advancing your personal self towards the next
I
level?
mean, I've been there with both of our sons. They're first of all, they're both very well educated, graduate degrees and MBAs. So we made sure that was covered. They studied abroad in St. Petersburg, in Melbourne, in Essex.
Mhm.
So giving them the international dimension. We're a very international family. Um, so that's important. The education is a very important stepping stone. Um, my youngest son, I gave him career advice. My eldest son more or less did his own thing, which is fair enough. But my youngest son and I thought about where's the best place for him to start. He's also a finance guy. They're both finance people. One of them is a bit more IT. And I said, Justin, the best place for you to learn, it's all about learning, is go to a fast moving consumer goods company because
Mhm.
there you learn more about finance than any place else because of the holistic nature of the business from consumer back to supply chain. It's very holistic. It's very integrated, and he now he's doing a trainee program with Chibo in Hamburg, and he
Mhm.
spends 3 months in logistics, 3 months in sales controlling, 3 months in online controlling, 3 months in personnel controlling. It's fantastic, and it's a great company as well. So his learning curve is really steep, and um, you know. Also, I think work life balance. I mean, I think work life balance shouldn't be underestimated. But people are different. I mean, I have one member of our family is he's with a strategic consultancy company, one of the big ones, and he works his butt off. He works his butt off. He earns good money. He works his butt off. So less private time. Um, my kids wouldn't do that because their work life balance is too important.
Mhm.
So that's an individual choice at the end of the day. But I think education is hugely important. I think international experience is hugely important. To have
Yeah.
lived abroad, lived outside of Germany, had exposure to other cultures. That for me is essential in personal growth. And then, hey, be happy at what you're doing. If you're not happy at what you're doing something wrong. And there's Johannes, there are so many people that are not happy in doing what they're doing. And I can tell you, if we use the Bluequist model or other similar models, you would be able to tell, would press the button, who's happy in the job, who's in the right job, who's not in the right job. You could make your company so much more productive.
Yeah, I mean, we have these cases where you have people using, like employees, teams using Bluequist, identifying for the first time, like after 30 years, what their true motivations are and where the misfit comes from in their current job. And the realization is like, I never knew this. But what can I mean, wow, look at that. 30 years later, you understand, or 10 years into the job, that the motivational fit into this group or in this job is just not there. And but you cannot, I mean, you cannot identify this on a functional level. It's deeper than that. It goes into the motivational sphere, and then you understand, wow, I need to change. And this is where it happens when it goes deeper than only up on the rational level.
No, I agree with you. Now, of course, you need to get ownership from the CEO and the shareholders of that company to want to do it,
Yes.
because the bias of HR is more administrative than strategic change. Not all, there are exceptions, and I love working with the exceptions, but in general, it's like a policies and procedures kind of place. Now, the Americans have introduced talent acquisition, and that's right. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Uh, but they've started that. They invented that, and that's the right way to go. But we need better people in HR to prioritize human capital.
Yeah, but I think the more people like you and me and others of peers are starting to look at human potential, talent management, talent centricity, the more this wave will grow into other. domains.
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up in a world where you had an appraisal every 6 months, and it was tied to your annual salary and your base and your increase or your promotion. It wasn't done based on stomach judgment. Baucherfahrung, as we say in Bauchgefühl, as we say in Germany, is done not as scientifically as it can be done now with tools like Bluequist has, but there was certainly the effort there on the part of the American companies to understand the needs of their human capital and to develop that human capital, although the execution is difficult.
Yeah, it is. It was never easy to change something important for the better, as far as I look
Yeah.
back. That's a good ending note, I assume. Paul, are there any last words you want to share? You want to discuss? Let us know.
I'll tell you, it's a bit of a funny one. The best interview question I ever encountered in my career was at Nike.
Okay.
And it just goes to show you how you can find out something about an individual very quickly.
Yeah.
And the question is, and you're looking at the guy straight in the eyes or the girl straight in the eyes, and you say, what would be on your gravestone? Okay? Was wird auf dein Grabstein stehen? And if people at Nike, if people laughed and took that with humor and then came up with a spontaneous, like I said in the interview, he didn't want to go, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of answers, they were well received. It was frankly that was a good way to find out a cultural fit or not.
Yes.
And when other people kind of go, oh Jesus, what kind of a question is that? You can't ask me that. They're not going to make it at Nike. They're the wrong people. And then people who would say, let me think about that one. Also, so the people who were spontaneous came back with a bit of humor. Great question. Let throw something out. He didn't want to go. Blah 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 blah. You'll miss me or something like that. Yeah, that was the part of the profile that qualified them for at least for going to a next interview with Nike.
Well, I mean, but you hadn't any kind of psychological framework behind it, right? It was a question, and then you accepted
It
a.
was it was it was in emotional intelligence really. That was there was nothing scientific about it,
Okay.
but it was very helpful. You don't need science for everything.
Well, spontaneous reactions often show a lot about your character, so
Exactly.
that's an interesting
Exactly.
question. Maybe we will introduce that to our hiring here at Bluequist. Let's see. I will let you know what comes out of it. Okay, Paul. Well, thank you very much. This 42 minutes really passed by very quickly, at least for me. I
Yeah,
hope you
for me,
had
for me too.
perfect. I hope you had fun and it was convenient. And thank you for sharing your experience. I hope our viewers and listeners will appreciate it the same. So thank you very much for being with us, Paul, and anytime.
Bluequist www.bluequist.com